Virus 13, Chapter 25. Monroy waved his keycard past his apartment door. The light on the lock blinked green and the door popped open. The apartment was located between a group of rundown buildings west of the interstate. The rent was dirt cheap as the area's best days were far behind it. The poverty here on the east side amplified the violence tenfold like a magnifying glass aimed at a dry leaf on a sunny day. None of this bothered Monroy, though. He was so intimidating that the troublemakers of the east side did their best to avoid him. The sickly light from the street lamp spilled into the apartment, cutting an unwelcoming yellow wedge through the complete darkness inside. Lights on. A row of harsh lights in the ceiling coughed and sputtered to life, illuminating a small, under-furnished apartment. A tiny living room before him contained an old lawn chair and a glass coffee table. The sole item on the table was a small computer. Little milky circles tracked their way across the glass tabletop, like alien footprints close to the ceiling like a moot point. He dropped his keys and phone on the table and plopped onto the couch, kicking off his shoes with a sigh of relief. Another day, another paycheck. The familiar pain in his head had started just on time, his post-work monitoring. His life had become so routine that even his damn headaches had developed their own unyielding schedule. A bottle of aspirin awaited him underneath the table, and he swallowed the pills dry. On his computer, he checked the news again. More hysteria about the rampaging virus. Another headline warned of more severe weather predicted for tomorrow across the South and Midwest tornadoes, floods, thunderstorms, the misgivings of this disgruntled planet. Monroy went to his bedroom and dumped the contents of his pockets on the nightstand as he loosened his tie. After tugging off his tie, slacks, and stiff white-collar shirt, he felt like a new man. His clothes were so boxy and uncomfortable. In the mirror on his wall, he caught up a curious sight. Monroy's face, arms, and neck down to his collarbone were much darker than the rest of his body, which was a light mulatto brown. It looked like the black equivalent of a redneck farmer's tan. With another depressed sigh, he hunched over and pulled off his socks, leaving deep lines of indentation in his shins where the socks had been squeezing him all day. Goosebumps spurred across his skin in the cold morgue of a bathroom. When he twisted the shower knob, ice water blasted his skin like the spray of a riot hose. The pandemic, the director, the human blobs he dealt with every day at work were all violently shared from his skin by the sting of the freezing water. He grabbed the bottle from the shower ledge, lathered up his hands, and began to wash himself. Then a weird thing started to happen. The water running off Monroy's feet became licorice black. The color of his face began to melt away, and the blackness of his skin ran down his legs and face like crude oil. In a few seconds, his unusually extra dark face, neck, and forearms were back to the same light brown color as the rest of his body. The filthy water swirled down and drained like coffee. He finished the shower and dried off. In the mirror, a different person greeted him. He hated putting that paint on, but he had no choice. As he stared in the mirror, he wondered what it would be like if he stopped putting on his daily camouflage. Would he be able to find a woman? He doubted it. Up to this point in his life, he didn't have much luck in that department. In all the years he had lived in this apartment, he hadn't had one guest, especially not a female one. How could he expect to get close to someone when he was hiding behind a layer of gloom? For every day he covered himself, he felt himself becoming more impatient and hostile, as if the thick makeup was trapping his emotions inside him. There was no other option. He had to keep doing it. If not, he would be out of a job. Still naked, he went back into his room to get dressed. When he opened the drawer filled with underwear, he paused as if deep in lost thought. He dug deep beneath his undergarments and extracted a black folder hidden below. It had been years since he had flipped through the pages inside, but maybe it was time to read it again. He sat on the edge of his bed and flipped open the binder. On the inside, the name Alex Jurgen was written in bold black letters. The first page was a tattered and worn science article on camouflage in the animal kingdom. At the bottom of the paper, there was a picture of a chameleon and an octopus. The article explained how the reptile's color changing ability is very rudimentary, but the camouflage cephalopods was much more advanced. The octopus and cuttlefish can disappear almost instantaneously against any black background. Not only can silverfish change the colors of their skin, but it can change its visible texture as well, whether it be the pebble rocks of the ocean floor or the ruffled swaying arms of a sea animal. Cephalopods could even cross between two different backgrounds while blended in the entire time. According to the article, this complexity came from the millions of nerves that directly attached to the chromatophore skin cells, giving the brain a direct line of communication with the skin. These specialized skin cells, which are sacs of pigments that could be squeezed to change shapes and thus color. The cell also manipulated reflected plates within to control the appearance of the skin's texture. Monroe had read the article thousands of times. He flipped the page. On the second page was a newspaper clipping dated 60 years ago with the headline, First Transgenic Human Chameleon. The article continued on to say how scientists at GeneFirm have successfully inserted crafted genes into a human child, who now has the unique ability to change the color of his skin. The article stated how the child belonged to a wealthy octopus enthusiast, John Jurgen, who had funded his research. Human genetic rights organizations have been up in arms over these outstanding transgenic modifications for years. Religious and anti-transgenic groups call the existence of such children a grievous injustice against God and man. The article explained how a bill was stalled in Washington that would ban these kinds of superfluous genetic alterations. However, many legislators feared the bill would end the transgenic alterations used to create their own gene-doped superkids. The legislation was in response to an increasingly bizarre transgenic humans that were popping up everywhere. The market was a free for all, with parents playing God with their children's genome. If someone was rich enough, most genetic engineers weren't going to question their motives. Monroe hated his skin. He hated crooked government officials. He hated ignorant parents. But most of all, he hated the unethical scientists at GeneFirm. He had more in common with telephones than he cared for. His grandfather, John Jurgen, was that billionaire nutjob and octopus enthusiast. Sam Monroe was not his real name. He was born Alice Jurgen. Reading all this was intensifying his headache, but he kept on. The next page was an article on his father, Paul, the stocky bodybuilder and first human chameleon. His dad lived in an abnormal life in the spotlight of the media. His color-changing ability was a breakthrough in genetic modification. Sam's father loved every minute of it. Thanks to his brand new trait, he was famous. Paul was the life of any party when he would strip naked and effortlessly blend into the wallpaper, jumping out and scaring the living shit out of his fellow intoxicated revelers. Monroe's father loved his unique ability about as much as his son hated this. By the time he was ready to have kids, laws had been passed so those genetic modifications would be removed in any future progeny. Paul Jurgen didn't want this, so what did he do? He had a free conception, the only way to pass on his transgenic DNA without it being removed by the government. Thus, Alex Jurgen was born just like his dad, a human chameleon, the spice-free bird, a genetic leopard with no cancer-proof genes. To make matters worse, young Alex never lived up to his father's expectations. Like the octopus, he and his father's color-changing ability was linked to their emotional state. When they were mad, they turned a blotchy dark red. When they were happy, their skins were polished with bright colors such as yellow, orange, and blue. For whatever the reason, Alex had trouble controlling the link between his emotions and his skin. The inability to control his color-changing led to many complications in his day-to-day life. For him, the cellophane genes were a crippling lie detector and a blowhole for his temper. His childhood consisted of a constant stream of punishment for letting his true emotions run wild over his flesh. "Did you break the garage window, Alice?" his father once asked. Young Alex didn't have to say a word, his skin rippling waves of red giving him away. He hadn't grown up with his heart in his sleeve. His heart covered the surface of his entire body, exposed to anyone who cared to look. Monroe appreciated more than most the importance of hiding your true feelings. Losing the ability to do so was an incredible disadvantage in his world. Emotional deception, it seemed, was a staple of human culture. Without it, human civilization would be crippled by honesty. Whether it is talking to a boss or a girlfriend, people must hide their feelings daily in order to keep the peace. He never had this luxury. During college, he had a job at the school's newspaper. One day, he was told by the editor that his article wasn't good enough to be a feature. Manoy's skin immediately flushed red and rippled with displeasure, alerting his boss to the contempt he felt. The editor asked if Manoy had a problem with his decision, and that was the end. He lost his temper, and the next day he was jobless. His life had been filled with so much heartache and grief as a result of his transgenic burden. It was nearly impossible to get a job as Alex. No one wanted to hire a transgenic freak, especially a freak with susceptibility to cancer. His unstable skin was a liability. Legally, no one could officially reject him for his genes, thanks to transgenic equal opportunity laws, but since his genes could interfere with his actual job, he was screwed. It was only after he started using his dark cover-up that he was able to find the land of real job. Thus, Alex Jurgen became Sam Manoy. Every morning he applied the dark mask covering his face, neck, and arms. He had begged Dr. Director Zelinsky for the job, who, in a rare moment of compassion, agreed to hire him as long as he promised to keep his disguise. So far, it had worked. Life had suddenly become a great deal easier, with a sense of normality that had been out of his grasp for so long. Frustrated and angry, Manoy threw the pages down his bed and stood up. He walked into the bathroom and looked at himself again in the mirror. This time, he was no longer that light chocolate brown. Instead, his flush had transformed to rippling waves of bright red, like a flashing beacon, as if to warn her of some unforeseen danger.